I popped up and realized that something was wrong. She wasn't acting right at all. And I woke John up and I said, call 911, something's wrong. And he was like, well, let me have her and see. He wanted to see if he could, get her going and stuff. And I called 911. Well, while I was talking to 911, she said, Daddy, I want Mommy to hold me. And so I took her from him while he finished the call with 911, and she went limp. So my name's Madison Heintz, and we've been coming just for a few months now. A couple months ago, the Lord laid it on our heart that we just wanted to find a church home that poured into all of us. We have younger children who are 10, and we wanted to just find a church that poured scripture and just really taught them the Lord and, what it means to be just a Christian and a follower of Christ, and using everything they learn and just implement it in their day-to-day life. And also, our older daughter who's 14 and loving on the baby. We have a 7-month-old too. So we came and checked out Greater Life, and that was the first time we came. We had our oldest daughter with us, I believe, and so we decided we enjoyed it, and we were like, well, let's try it. Let's go back again next Sunday. So we came back the following Sunday, and to kind of give a little backstory before I get started, on December the 7th of 2019, I gave birth to the most beautiful little girl named Aurora Rose, and she was born what we would say inside out. She had a birth defect called gastroschisis, and for whatever reason, there was a hole in her abdominal wall that didn't close up, and her large intestines, small intestines, and her stomach were all on the outside of her body when she was born. And she spent 4 weeks in the NICU, and she was just, the neonatologist at the NICU actually said that she was just it was like a book, just like everything that could go right went right with her. They were able to get her, all of her intestines back in. It was like textbook is what he said. You couldn't have gotten a more perfect. The only issue is that her fascia, which is like the muscle that goes around your belly, was too small because it didn't grow. Nothing was in her stomach to grow to help that fascia. So she had a large hernia that she was left with. But other than that, it was perfect. 4 weeks in the NICU, and took her little 5-pound self home. And then in 2020, actually October the 8th of 2020, she had her hernia repaired. And it ended up being a little bit more difficult than they expected. She had a lot of scar tissue. Her scar at the time was only about that big. She didn't have no belly button. We called her our belly buttonless baby. But she didn't have no belly button and a scar about that big. Well, when they went in to close up that hernia, they realized that there was a lot of adhesions from the previous surgery and the scar, and they had to remove a lot of that. So her scar went from about this big to about 4 to 5 inches across her belly. But besides that, she was strong. Didn't even begin to explain Aurora. They were worried that she was going to be in a great deal of pain because the surgery was a little bit more extensive than they thought. But the very next day, she was climbing the walls of that hospital, and John, my husband, actually decided to go to work for a few hours because we thought that we were going to have to stay because they thought that she was going to be in, a great deal of pain. So he left and we were in CMC, Maine, and he came all the way back to Concord to go to work. Well, the doctor walked in and he was like, yeah, let's get her out of here. She's tearing down this hospital room. So he had to come all the way back to pick us up, and she never, ever took any pain medication or anything. And 2 days after her surgery, we heard her playing, and we heard a noise. It was like a constant noise of something. And we walked into the boys' room, and there was a beanbag chair, and she was belly flopping on the beanbag chair 2 days post-surgery. And we were scared and laughing and carrying on like nothing was wrong. So anyway, she was just very resilient, and she started getting some issues. Well, she always struggled with constipation, but we knew that was going to be a problem. They kind of forewarned us about that, and she always struggled with constipation. But as she got older, it got worse. The belly pains. She would have these sharp agony, like just be walking and all of a sudden just double over. And they just kept saying, it was from her intestines being malrotated. They didn't follow like a certain coil. They were just kind of all jumbled in there, and she had slow digestion, and would get constipated pretty badly. But one night she had a spell of what she's always had, the belly pains. We'd give her regimen of medication that she was prescribed that usually worked, and we gave it to her, and everything seemed fine. Well, March 24th, she was in the bed with us, and I noticed that she was doing something weird. She was like hallucinating. And I popped up and realized that something was wrong. She wasn't acting right at all. And I woke John up and I said, call 911, something's wrong. And he was like, well, let me have her and see. He wanted to see if he could, get her going and stuff. And I called 911. Well, while I was talking to 911, she said, Daddy, I want Mommy to hold me. And so I took her from him while he finished the call with 911, and she went limp. And so the ambulance came and took us to Northeast, and we got to Northeast. I rode in the ambulance with her, and we got to Northeast, and they worked on her in the ambulance, and they worked on her in the emergency department, and at 6:16 they called her time of death. She had a kink in her intestines that they didn't know, and over the time it just worn down until it finally. So she had a obstruction, and then it burst, and so she became septic overnight because we didn't know. She stopped with the pain because it had released, but then she just became septic because of everything that was happening, and we had no idea. She just went to bed. We all went to bed like normal. But anywho's, I spent a very long time angry at God after that. It didn't happen right away. It was months later when the anger finally set in, and then when anger set in, my grief was just so deep and dark. I became somebody that I didn't even recognize. I was acting out in ways. I was saying things. I probably spent the better part of a year drinking all the time. I was just trying to drown that feeling out. And I just knew that I had to get out of the dark place that I was at, but I was just so angry with God, and it took a lot. It took a lot to come out of that, a lot of praying even when you don't want to pray. And my husband, who we grieved very differently, but he has said it multiple times that he was scared to death that he was never going to get his wife back, but it was because of him pressing in and being the husband that he needed, like that I needed him to be, and being the Christian man, and just him praying over and all but dragging me to church even when I didn't want to. And so I finally started to feel like I was becoming myself again. But during that time of grief, I was stuck on what I would always call as a carousel. I was stuck on this carousel, this movie, where it would literally start from the moment I realized something was wrong with Aurora all the way up until the time they called it her time of death. And then it would start all over again. And every moment of that entire 3 hours, I remembered vividly for months. And it was just, I sat on the couch for months and didn't do anything. John had to stay home with me, and while I was in that deep, dark pit of grief. And when I finally came out of it, it was like all of that finally just shut off. And I felt like I could finally breathe again. Grief was still really, really heavy, but I was no longer on that carousel. I was able to start focusing on myself, getting myself back where I needed to be. But I always thought about the lady who was in that ambulance, the paramedic. I thought about her often, all the time, because I couldn't imagine doing what she had to do and what she did whenever a mother is sitting right there. And I just thought about her all the time, and John and I had talked about her, and I was just like, and I asked about her at one time, and somebody had told us that she had retired. She ended up retiring shortly after that call, and I didn't know her name, didn't know where she lived, I didn't know anything. I think it was one of the firefighters at right over here who had told us that she had retired. But so jump back, we come to Greater Life. We really loved it. And then the second time when we came, we just had Margie, the baby. And we went and found our seats, and I was like, you want to try to, like, let's go check out the nursery. I said, if there's too many kids in there, like, well, we'll just keep her with us, because we didn't put her in the nursery the first time. Let's just go check it out. And he was like, well, if that's what you want to do, babe, because I'm pretty anxious, So we walked into the nursery, and there was these two ladies. You could definitely tell that they were sisters. And they just greeted us, and they were just so sweet. And we instantly just felt this, like, just this loving presence in that nursery. Nobody else was in there. And I kind of looked at John. I was like, well, I said, how about I'll go get her registered, because I think she has to be, like, signed in or whatever. So John stayed with the baby in the nursery, and I went and got her registered and everything like that. And it took a while because she had never been put in the system. So then I got her signed in and everything. And when I walked back into the nursery, I could tell, like, there was a shift there was just a shift. And I was just like, what has happened since I've been gone? Like, and I looked over at John, and I was like, what happened? And he goes, babe, he was like, babe, this is Angie, and she's the one who ran the call that morning. And as soon as I saw her, it was like everything came flooding back. That entire morning, I mean, from the moment I saw her face when she came there, I was in my pajamas when she got there. I remember her telling me, you need to get clothes on now. I remember her asking for a car seat. I remember everything vividly, and it just all came rushing back to me. And I realized, like, this is the woman I've wanted to hug for so long. And I've wanted to see her for so long. And I never thought I'd see her again, because I never got a chance to thank her and say that your strength was amazing, because I don't know that not that I don't know. I know that I would never be able to do what you did. And I know that it wasn't our outcome that we hope for, because she's gone. She's in heaven. But that was Jesus's plan, and even though that's always been a hard thing for me to accept, I still know that the efforts that you put in that day did not go in vain. And I just thank you.
Ooh. Oh. So
that morning they came into the nursery. I looked at them, I was like, they look familiar. And I was like, okay. So I sat back. My sister was talking to John, and she had gone down the hallway to get little Margie registered. And my sister's asking him, are y'all from around here? Where do you live now? How many kids do you have? And he goes into telling their story, and he got to Aurora. And I'm just sitting there listening, and he says, we lost a daughter 2.5 years ago. I was like, And Vicky said, well, where do you live now? And he said, well, we just live right around the corner. And my heart fell. And I told him, I said, you live at Sunset and 200. He said, how do you know that? And I said, I picked up Aurora that morning, trying to hold back the tears, but it had been building for so long. Being a paramedic for 30 plus years, you have calls that stick with you. You don't know why, just something about them, they don't go away. And this one just, I couldn't shake it. I will tell you, I never would let parents ride with me in the back of the truck as sick as their youngin' was, as sick as your child was. That just didn't happen. Because I can't treat the child and take care of mom or dad. That's just a lot.
Yeah.
But I just kept saying, God, you got to get me through this. I said, God, you're going to have to lead and guide everything I do on this call, because I can't. I remember reaching up and grabbing her and saying, Mom, hang in there with me. And it seemed the longest ride from Locust to Concord. I didn't. Oh my goodness. We got there to the hospital. We got her out of the truck. We go inside. I don't know where you went, because as soon as I gave the nurse's report, I couldn't find you. And I just sat down and I lost it. And the nurse come over to me and she said, are you okay? And I'm like, mm-mm. I was like, this is not how I wanted to retire. And she says, do what? And she said, I retire in 4 weeks. And I said, this is not how I wanted to go out. She said, oh, I am so sorry. But like I said, you have calls that just don't leave. And this has been on my heart so long. I was just so thankful, because I told Pastor Daniel, I said, I never got closure. I said, because you don't know. Things go through your mind. Did I do everything? Was there something else? Does the parents blame me for what happened? And I just never could get closure. And that morning y'all walked in, and you come over and hugged me. I just felt a relief. And I felt like the heaviness was gone. And it felt so good. That I am so thankful y'all are here.
We are too. We just knew that morning after we left, I mean, we still talk about it all the time. We're just like, gosh, I can't believe that. Only God could do that. Only God could, in that nursery, nobody else was there. Nobody other babies were there. It was just us and your sister. Only God and Aurora orchestrated that morning. And it was just like, it just was like a piece to the healing that I knew that I needed. And it was because of God placing that in our hearts to come here, come again, take it was just all, take Margie to the nursery, something that I would have never done at any, church that we've only been to, like that was only the second time. It was just like everything was just so, and we just talk about it all the time. It's only a God thing.
Mm-hmm. And I got to sit and hold this child and love on her. And that just, oh my gosh.
And then when we came to pick up Margie, she was asleep on her chest. And I was just like,
oh yes.
And I was just like, this is truly amazing. When you spend so much time in that deep, dark place and angry with God in the ways that I was angry with him, and then something like this happens, it just busts you right back open. Your heart you're just like, you are who you've always been. Even in my hatred at the time, my hurt, my sorrows, my grief, you've still always been good. And even though I did show him, so I was very verbal with my anger too. And even through all that, he still did this. He still gave me what I needed. He gave us this opportunity. Yes. And I'm just forever grateful. We just serve a wonderful, powerful, endless amount of love of our Heavenly Father. He just has so much love that he pours out, and I'm just so grateful that he didn't cast me aside.
That's right.